Okay, again, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Rick Rivera. I'm the EMEA sales manager for CADlink. Um, again, during the presentation, if you have any questions, instead of having a million questions bombarded, please email me, and I will respond to your emails as they come in. My email address is there listed at the bottom, rickr@cadlink.com. For those of you that are dealers that are on this webinar, you can certainly contact a regional sales manager with any questions that you have as well. And they can answer any questions you have regarding the product or sales type questions. Okay. If you're an end user, definitely email me, let me know. Or you can talk to your distributor as well. Okay. All right. So with that said, we'll go ahead and minimize this window here. So if you haven't seen Digital Factory, if you're new to the product, Digital Factory V10 OKI edition. So we actually have two versions. We have our OKI edition and then OKI Pro edition. The difference is the supported printers. The OKI edition supports the smaller A4, A3 machines, the 700 series, 600 series, 800 series, 8432. And then the Pro series supports everything in addition to the Pro 9000 series devices, as well as the Pro 1040 and 1050 label printers, which were just released. Okay, so our Digital Factory, right now I've got our Pro 8432 driver installed. Okay, we're going to be covering the transfer graphics application and some of the key features. But what I want to do is just kind of give you a quick overview of the product, and then we'll kind of go into the transfer printing side of things as far as how to optimize your transfer printing. Okay. So if you notice, our print queues, okay, our product is queue based. Okay, so typically we have a graphics and a photo queue. The difference between the two queues is in the rendering intents, how they manage certain colors. So the graphics queue is going to try to give you some more kind of pop colors, a little more saturation and so forth, whereas the photo queue is going to give you more of that realistic look for details and shadows and things like that, for obviously for objects such as photos. So our typical menu items, we've got our import. Our file import is quite impressive. We can actually import different file formats. So we support EPS, PDF, TIFF, JPEG, SVGs, PNGs, all the common file formats. Okay, there are other so-called RIPs on the market that have limited file support, such as the products from Forever, Magic Touch, what's the other one out there, Shockline, which all of these are really more, these other programs are really more of wizard-driven print drivers. They don't have their own built-in drivers like we do, okay? The queue, our software, again, is a queue-based RIP, so we can go in and manage the queues. Now, in the queue manager, this is where you would configure your port settings. If you click on Install Control Panel for the OKI products, what it will do is it will connect to the web page of the printer, so you could actually check status of the printer, and I believe even make changes via the printer's web page. We can also create additional queues in our RIP as well. So if you wanted to, you can configure a custom queue with the custom print mode to where the only thing you'd have to do is import the image, resize, and click print, nothing else. So we can actually streamline the printing process. And I'll show you how we can go in and make the copies and so forth, okay? Also in the queue, we do have some wizards here on adjusting the maximum amount of white toner, the maximum black removal, okay? That's our black removal tool, so you can actually calibrate it for the queue, for a specific print mode, or you can create a new print mode based on these calibrations, okay? So depending on the material you're using, you can actually go in and calibrate it and tweak it to your liking, okay? We could also set up our choke, okay? The choke is the number of pixels that we choke the white from peeking outside the color. You can also set up your color boost, okay? This is basically kind of adding some saturation to your image to give you some more eye-popping colors, okay? And then you also have your photo merge, okay? The jobs menu, this is where you're going to find your image editing tools, okay? So this is where you're going to find your color adjustments. This is where you're going to rip your print. You can also view your raw data. This is very unique with our rip, to where you can actually, once you've ripped your job, you can actually view the raw data. And I use this, personally, I use this mainly to check where my white's going to print, to make sure I'm not wasting material. It takes 2 seconds to check it, and then you can go ahead and send it off for print once you verified that it's going to come out right. We also include some image editing tools. Our RIP includes GIMP, which is a open source free image processing program, very similar in functionality to Photoshop. Okay, so this allows you to take an image from within Digital Factory, make edits. If you wanted to add text to your image or something like that, you can do that using GIMP, and then bring it back into the queue for printing. Okay. Now, fluid mask is actually an option, but I will show you how we can use fluid mask for some of the features, okay, to do some specific cleanup, okay. Our Supersize image feature, this is actually a very unique feature that I highly recommend showing if you're a dealer. This is actually really excellent tool. Photoshop, Corel, Illustrator can't touch us when it comes to supersizing images. What this does is it'll actually take a low-res image, interpolate it, and give you a nice high-res, clean image to work with, okay? We also have a send to Photoshop option, so we can send the job to Photoshop, make our edits, and then from Photoshop, using our plugin, we can send it back to the queue. Also, if you've made changes using effects and things like that, and you don't like what you see, instead of deleting the image and having to re-import it and start over again, you can just undo the plugin effects and it'll just take you back to square one. And then we have our production plugins, our knock me out tools, our easy adjustments for cleaning up black, white backgrounds, contrast, saturation. And then we have our CADlink effects. So we have distressed frames, and then we also have the distress filter. The distress filter is really cool if you want to get that antique look to your images. And I'll kind of go through some of these as we go through our presentation. The devices menu, this is where you go ahead and manage your devices, okay? If you need to check for an updated driver, this is where you'd go. You can check here on this icon here. It connects to our server, our driver server, looks for a new driver. If there's a new driver, it'll show up to the right of your current version. And then you just click on the update to update. It'll download it, extract it, and install it. Very simple, seamless to work with, okay? We can also manage our print modes, okay? So in here, Typically, what I recommend is not modifying the print modes that are already in the RIP. If you want to create a custom setting or a custom mode, I always recommend creating a copy first and then modifying it as you like. This way that if you make a mistake or you have a problem, you can always revert to the original one. You don't have to go and reload the driver to reload all of the print modes again. Okay. We can also manage our print media. Okay, so print media is good if you're doing some custom sizes. We have all the standard sizes that the Windows print driver for the OKI products have, but we also have custom sizes. Some of the unique sizes we have as well is, for instance, A4 and A4 long edge first, okay, landscape. If you're doing A4 size with an 8432 to save toner, you'd want to load it in the landscape mode to feed it through. That's actually going to use less drum, so it's going to use less consumables in the printing process. Okay, so we have those options in the software. Okay, so you could also manage your spot colors and spot plane. I won't go into details on those. Under the tools, this is where we can go into our options and we can set up kind of the default settings for our RIP. If you're using a computer that's got loads of memory on it, you can go into the RIP window here and you can set the system priority to the RIP. So if you notice that the RIP is kind of chugging along, not really moving as fast as it should, we can pretty much go ahead and allocate more memory to it by bumping the system priority up. Okay. Same thing with the processing. If you want to be able to process more jobs at a single time, we can crank this up. By default, it's at 3. I always crank my values up. And also your preview options. By default, it's set to medium, meaning that your preview window here will show the image at a lower resolution. Now, that doesn't mean it's going to print that way. It's just going to preview it that way. But again, if you've got a high enough video card, tons of memory on your laptop or PC, you can set that to very high to have a nice high image on the preview. So we'll go ahead and close that. Okay. The direct to port, this is typically used for troubleshooting purposes. But if you had a PRN file that was generated through the driver, you can go in here to direct to port and you can go direct to the printer to the port. And what that does is bypasses any print modes and things like that. We tend to use that more for troubleshooting purposes. Okay. We have the switch language to switch languages. We also have our barcode support for barcode printing. Okay. I won't be going through the barcode feature. That will be a later webinar. Okay. At any point that you need help with your software, okay, one of the unique things we've done with the newer version of our Digital Factory product is that we have this new product called Compass. Compass is now our user manual. Okay, so Compass would be used in place of an actual paper manual. Now, the advantage of this is that you can actually go through different options here. And if you notice, we also have videos for some of these items, okay? And a lot of these videos, all the videos are in English, and most of the videos are subtitled in other languages as well, such as Spanish, French, Italian, German, okay? So if you need help, this is the first place you want to look, okay? So we'll go ahead and close that out. All right, so we've kind of gone through the menus. Now we've got our workspace, okay? This area here is where you import your jobs, okay? To the right, this is our preview window. Now, if you notice, my preview window is set up to preview multiple pages. But if you like working with, one image at a time or one page at a time or one file at a time, we can go in and set that to single page. And there you have it. You only have the single page. Okay, so I can either do a view to fit or view to the width, and that'll show up on my screen. Okay. Down here in the lower left, this is where your reserved job. So once you've printed a job, this is where it will show up. So if I need to reprint this again, I can just simply drag and drop it there and send it for print again. Okay. The other option I have for this bottom area is my browse window. Okay. The browse window is going to let you go to your folder where you have, say, your image files. Okay. And from here, we can click and drag these into, okay, our production window here. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and drag some of these jobs over into my queue. Okay. This is something you can't do with the products such as Forever, Magic Touch, the Space Control, or the Shockline product, or even Sun Angel product. So this is where we have that advantage, is the productivity. Okay. And then the lower right hand corner here is where you can specify your print mode. Okay. Your page size, duplicates. We can crop our image, set number of copies. We can also go into our color adjust window. So in our color adjust window, we can actually go in and tweak our colors. Okay, so if we notice that the colors could be a bit more brighter or a bit more saturated, we can go in here and increase those values without having to touch the actual ICC profiles or the color curves. Okay, all of our medias are profiled already. So this kind of gives you that easy, quick adjustment. Okay, this is where you can also set your choke. Okay. Now the coverage underbase, this is the coverage underbase for the white toner. Now for the 8432, it's set at 200, but we have seen other printers where, we're running them at maybe 210 for other medias, such as Shockline. For the 8432, it's set at 210. Some other medias, we may even have to go upwards of maybe 280, even 300 at times. Okay, so it really takes some adjustment to tweak it in exactly. But if you're using the proper profile for the proper material, you shouldn't have to touch that. Now you notice we have profiles for Forever, Freestyle, Johto, as well as Shockline. We will soon have Nina papers added to the list as well. Okay. Okay, so with that said, we're going to go through here and show some of the tools that are used for transfer printing and show you how we operate those. So the first one I want to go through is the easiest one and the one that most people use, which is our Knock Me Out Black. Okay, now with our Knock Me Out Black, okay, so if we want to print this image onto a black shirt, there's no need to print black. Okay, what we'd want to do is we want to knock out the black so that way we can use the garment, the t-shirt, as that base. Okay, now the way we do that, we can do it two ways. We can do it automatically by configuring either the print mode or the queue for that, or if we import it into a queue that does not have it automatically knocked out, we can either go to the jobs menu, or we can right click on the image and go to our production plugins. Okay. Now, when we click on the Knock Me Out Black, it's going to automatically knock out the black. Okay. Now, the beauty is we can actually change the underbase. So we can make the image more opaque okay? But in doing so, you're going to lose some of the color, okay? So in doing that, we would also need to do a color boost adjustment, and I can show you where we can do that, okay? Now, if you set this underbase value too high, what it does is it puts a lot of white underneath, and sometimes it will make the image a lot more kind of plasticky. Doesn't really give it a good feel. Okay, so this is something that you can play around with. Now, our default setting of 74 is quite good. Okay, now in this particular example, what it's going to do is it's going to knock out the black, but these background areas are going to basically become transparent. Okay, now when I go to print this, all the color and will print as an opaque image. Okay, it'll print opaque. And then the area that is transparent will fill with holes. And what that'll do is give you that nice blend into the t-shirt. Okay, now if I want to see where the white is going to print, I could click on show underbase. Okay, and this is where it's going to show me where my white is going to print. Now down here, you see that it kind of fades out to that gray, okay, which is the transparent areas, okay? So the areas that are pure black is going to be pure white being printed, okay? We can also simulate the shirt color, okay, in here as well. So, you know, if I wanted to do this on a blue shirt, for instance, you know, I can click on the blue shirt, or, you know, if it's a gray shirt, for instance, I can go in here and change those settings, and it'll give you kind of a preview of what it's going to look like on that shirt color. Okay, but typically this is going to be on a black. Now, if I go ahead and click OK, it's going to go ahead and edit that image. And it's going to give me my image with the knockout already done. Now, if you notice, the queue is already configured to mirror the image. Okay, this is something the other programs or RIPs do not do. So the customer has to be cognitive of that when they import the image, is either create the image already mirrored and already resized, or they have to do it within the program. If they forget, they end up printing, they end up wasting media. We automatically mirror the image on import, okay? Now, if I go ahead and rip this file using my standard forever dark setting, okay? Go ahead and rip it here. And like I said, the beauty of our product is that we can view our rip data prior to printing, okay? So this really kind of gives us an advantage over the other products. Okay, so if I right click on the image, I can click on view raw data. Okay, it's always going to give you this message. We could just click on that window there, click OK. And we can actually preview, you know, where the holes are going to be placed, how they're going to be placed. And if you click on view all colors as black, it'll show you where your underbase is going to print. Me personally, okay, I personally use this view raw data to see where my white's going to print. So I always come in here real quick, do the view all as white, and make sure that it's going to print the way I want it to print. So if it looks good here, it's going to print good on your printer. Okay. So as you can tell in those gradients, we have our holes placed in here. Okay. Now we can customize the way the holes show up as well. Okay. What I'll do is go ahead and bring this image here a few more times and show you a couple of iterations of that image. Okay. So again, I'll go ahead and create the knockout using the same forever black setting. Okay, and what I'm going to do is double click on this job. Now, if I double click on the job, it's going to bring up my job properties. Okay, this is the settings I make in here are only going to affect that job. Now, if I want to affect the entire queue, I can open my queue properties, and in here I can set my properties as well. And whatever properties I change here will affect this print mode for this queue. Okay, but I don't want to do that. I just want to go ahead and change settings on this particular image itself. Okay. Okay, so the layer profile gives you your color channels, your processing options. This is where you can go in and set your coverage underbase. You can increase the coverage. You can set the default choke for that job. And here, if we want to kind of punch up the color, we have our color boost that we can bump up as well. Or again, if you go through the wizard, you can calibrate it and it'll automatically calibrate that to either the queue, the print mode, or a new print mode. Okay. And what I want to show is in the ink removal. This is what handles our holes in the background. Okay. So if you notice, we have it enabled, the frequency set at 20, and we have the angle at 22 degrees, and the shape is inverted around. Okay. Now we can go in and we can change that shape as well. Okay. Now, we do have customers that want to compare how the holes work to, say, Forever. Okay, they want to compare the rasterization. Okay, and typically what Forever recommends is a frequency of 27 and an angle of 5250, and they typically recommend Euclidean round. The Forever product only has 5 hole types. I believe Shockline only has 3 to 5. Magic Touch and Sun Angel have none. Okay. And the Windows driver for the OKI product does not have control either. Okay. Now the hole size, we're going to leave this at 255. This means that all the opaque areas will remain opaque. Okay, so whites are going to remain white, no holes in them. However, this is the hole size that we will have in the transparency. Okay, I'm going to leave that at the default, but I'm going to go ahead and click OK here. And I'm going to go ahead and rip this particular file. And what I want to show you is the difference of the look of the holes between one and the other. Okay. Okay, so this is the new one here. If I view the raw data, okay, the holes are going to be slightly different. Okay, so what I'm going to do is open 2 windows here so we can actually get a better look on how the holes are. So we'll go there, and this is the other one. Oops. This one here, and we'll view the raw data on that one. All right, so we have the 2 here. And want to try to get in the same area here. Okay, so if you notice, my holes actually look a little different here. So if you look in the area of the guitar and the transparency here, we can actually change the way the holes look. Okay, so the holes that you see here to the left are more reminiscent of the type of holes or the transparency that you would see coming out of a product such as Transfer Rip. Okay. We've had customers and dealers that are trying to compare, apples to apples, and this is a way you can actually compare those. I'm going to view all as black so we get a better look at the holes. Okay. So if you could see in the transparent areas, the holes are different because I used a different hole type. Okay, instead of inverted round, I'm using the Euclidean round. Okay, so we can actually get, we can create the exact same, what's called rasterization mode that transfer rip does. Now, the one beauty of our product is we actually can do 3 types of placement of our holes. Okay, so we can do rasterization similar to what transfer rip does. We can also do what's called micro mask as well. Okay, if you're not familiar with micro mask, in our rip we call it holes. Okay, just simple holes. I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and then I'm going to change the print mode. Okay, so this is our forever dart with holes. I'll go ahead and rip this. And if we go ahead and view the raw data, now this is going to give me holes throughout the entire image. Okay. Now, obviously, on an image that's got gradients or a photo or something like that, probably wouldn't use it, but on like a logo or something like that for a jersey, it's actually quite useful. You can actually set that up. And again, you can change your angle, your frequency, and the dot shape to get exactly what you want. Now, the beauty of that is you can create a new print mode based on that, and it's done deal. Okay, so that's something that I've done as well. Okay, now, once you've ripped the job, if you notice that, I made a mistake or I didn't want to use that print mode, instead of deleting the job and re-importing and reapplying everything, I can just simply right-click on it, click Open Page. And what this does is it removes the rip process from that job and allows you to go back and make modifications. So for instance, on this one here, I've opened it back up. If I undo the plugin effects, okay, this sets me back to square one. Okay, so this is very useful tool in our product. So we'll go ahead and undo the effects. Okay, and as you can see, I could process multiple jobs at one time. I don't have to do one file at a time, which is very time consuming. I could just load these up, modify everything, and then send them right to print and not wait. Okay, so I want to show you a couple of tools here that we can use for transfer printing. One of them is color replacement tool. This is very useful, especially if you're doing things like this where it's single color or a logo. It could be a single color or dual color, and you want to print this same image but different colors for different types of garments, for instance. Okay. Now, the color replacement is in our jobs menu. And what we could do is we could go to color replacement. Okay, so for instance, I want to take this image and I want to print it on a red shirt. Well, obviously, red on red's not going to go well. So what I want to do is change this color to something else, maybe blue. Okay, so what I do is I sample the color with my eyedropper tool here. And typically on the tolerance, I work anywhere between 5 and 10 on the tolerance, depending on the quality of the image. And then over here to the right, this is my input color. And over here, I'm going to change this. We'll do 100, and we'll do 70 and 70, for instance. Go and add that. Okay, and that's going to add my job color replacement. And then I'm going to go ahead and apply that. Okay, it's going to tell me if I want to preview it, I need to click on the color replacement preview button. So I could go ahead and click OK. And the color preview button is up here on top. Okay, If I click that, it's going to go ahead and process that with the settings I created, and it's going to give me that new color. I could then take this and go ahead and print it. Now, if I wanted to change that color again to something different, I can do it using color replacement. This is really useful, meaning that you don't have to, in Photoshop or any other program, create 5 different files with 5 different colors. I could just have the one image and change the color from within the product, okay? If I want to view the original, I can just click on the original and it'll show me my original image again, okay? The other tool we have is part of our knockout tool. I showed you the knock me black out, but we also have knock me color out, okay? So knock me color out is very useful for objects like this. For instance, if I wanted to print this image on a yellow shirt, I want to knock that yellow out, I could simply click on the yellow. I can adjust the underbase to clean it up a bit more, okay? If I click show underbase, this is going to show me where my white is going to print, okay? Now, if I wanted to print a yellow square on a blue shirt and have the blue showing through as the Adidas logo here, I could simply click on the blue of the Adidas logo. So if I click on the blue in here, okay, it's going to knock out the blue. Okay, it's going to knock out that blue only. And now if I look at my underbase, it's going to print the white square, but nothing here, which means that the shirt is going to show through that area. Okay, and in here you can do multiple colors. So if you had a multi-color, image, you can go in and take out multiple colors. But typically, you're just going to knock out 1, maybe 2 colors at the most with this tool. But again, you have that option to knock out more. Okay. So that's the knock me color out tool. Very useful. Okay. Now here's the fun one. This is the one I like to use. This is our Supersize image. Okay. Again, from the jobs menu or right click, we can go to Supersize image. Now this particular image is a low res image. And what happens is when you go to print that image, it's going to show up really kind of pixelated. So if you notice on the image here, as I zoom in, very pixelated, okay? And when you go to print that, it's going to print pixelated unless you put holes or something to kind of break it up. So if you want to get a good quality image, we can go ahead and supersize that image. Okay, so if I go ahead and say I want 300 dpi, click OK. Now you'll notice, especially here in the face and in the teeth, how much that's cleaned up. Cleans up very, very well. Okay. So if you notice some of the background here, especially on the wave, the edge of the wave, which will be on the edge of the shirt, okay, cleans up really well. Okay. Then if you click OK, it'll go ahead and apply that to the image. And before I get questions on it, no, you cannot export this image to be used elsewhere. I've had that question many times, is if I can use the Supersize and then export that image to a different program or something. And the answer would be no. It can only be used within our RIP. Okay. Another feature we have is our tiling feature, our crop feature. So for instance, this particular image here, I want to crop, most of this blue out, and I want to crop out that text that's on the bottom there. Okay, so if I click on the crop tool, I can go ahead and just click and drag in the area that I want to crop. Okay, I can also move the position of my crop, so I can kind of adjust it in or dial it in for my spacing and so forth to get, decent spacing. I can also shrink down the size or the width as well. Okay. Now, once I've done that, I can click on create. Okay, and that's going to knock that out. And then at this point, I can use my knock me color out feature. Click OK. And now I've knocked out the image. Okay, if I want to see where my white is going to print, if I rip that and then preview the raw data, again, view all colors as black, I can see where my white's going to print. Okay. Okay, so this is an example of clipping and knock me color out. Okay. Now, if you had an image that was bigger or an oversized image, so what we'll do is we'll take this image here and you want to print this to be able to put on a larger material, say a towel or something like that. Now, in the crop function, we can split it by rows and columns, by dimension, or manually. Okay, we can set the origin. So in here, we can kind of split this image into two and then overlap them when I go to heat press. Now, unfortunately, this is just going to do a straight cut. Okay, so it's very important when you're realigning that you get a good alignment on that. Okay, before you press. So, you know, the paper I would actually use hot fix tape to stick them together prior to putting it onto the heat press to press to the garment to kind of hold it in place. Okay. But if we go ahead and click on create, it'll go ahead and split that image out. And because I have my image to single view, it was only going to show me single view or single page. But if I go back to my multi-page view, now we can see that it split that image into two. Okay, and we can go ahead and take that and print it. All right. Okay, moving right along. We have this particular image here, and let me go back to my single page view. All right. So for instance, I have this image here that I want to print on, you know, a black shirt. Okay. However, or actually, no, I'm sorry. I want to take this image and print it on a colored shirt or maybe even on a white shirt. Okay. But I don't want to print this black here. Okay. Now, you know, some people would just go straight to the knock me black out. Okay. But the problem here is it's going to knock out all the black that's in this image, including these areas here on her face and in the ink that's here on her face. Now, we don't want to do that because if we go to print that, it's not going to have the black. And if we transfer it to a white or a colored shirt, the garment's going to show through. You're not going to have the black. Okay. So what we have is our optional filter, which is called fluid mask. Okay. Now, fluid mask, when we go ahead and click on that, it's going to go ahead and launch our fluid mask application. Okay. Now, once we open fluid mask, okay, the software is going to mask all the areas here. Now, fluid mask is useful for two types of products, something like this, or in the other case, if you had, say, an image or a photo with a girl with blonde hair blowing in the wind and you have a black background and you want to knock out, or I'm sorry, maybe a gray background, and you want to get rid of that background, but you want to keep all the detail of the hair. Fluid mask is very useful for this. This is a third-party filter. If you look online, there's a lot of videos that show you how to use the fluid mask plugin. But at this point, I could just simply click here. And for instance, you know, here where her head is, there's a little bit of hair there. I want to get rid of that too. So I'll go ahead and click there. Okay. And if I click on File, Save and Apply, Okay, that's going to bring me back into Digital Factory. It's going to edit that image. So right now it's going through the edit process. And once it's done, it will generate my new preview. There we go. And now we've got the white removed. Now, if I want, I can go back into my crop here. And I can shrink this area down. Okay, click create. And there you go. I've got my image ready to print. Okay. So that's our fluid mask. We also have the invert feature. So something like this, if we wanted to go ahead and invert it, we could invert this image. Okay. And then if we go in, do knock me black out, this is going to show me my underbase, which is going to be the white that's going to print. Okay. There we go. Okay. So we can invert the images in here as well. Again, we have the mirror tool here, but again, the queue is already configured to mirror. Okay. Now, for instance, I've had customers ask, how we can automate the queues for single print mode to where I just import the image, resize, and print. Okay. So what I'm going to do is create a queue to mimic, rasterization, what Forever does. Okay. Now, what I can do is create a new queue. Okay, so if I go into queues, I can go in here, take this queue, make a copy of it, close, double click on that queue, and here, call this custom raster black shirts. Make it specific. Okay. And we'll go ahead and click OK. And there's my custom shirt queue. Okay. And what I want to do is create a print mode to go with this queue. So I can go into my devices, manage print modes, and I'm going to use my black shirts as a base and modify it. So I'm going to copy that print mode. And here I'm going to call this raster black shirts, for instance. Click OK. There it is on my list. And now I could go ahead and modify this to my heart's content. So I can go in and I can bump up my coverage if I need to. I can set my default choke automatically. For the knock me out, I want it to knock out automatically, so I check this box. And what I want to do is I want to create this, I want my images to, when they import into this queue, to show up almost as a complete transparency, meaning that similar to what Forever does is they go from white to dark. And as they go from white being opaque to black being nothing or large hole, it changes the hole size as you go. And typically what I found is between 35 and 40 is a good number to go with, but you do want to bump up your color boost. And I typically bump this up to about 6. Okay, so that way you can recover some of that color that's going to be lost by converting it into that transparent. Okay, printer options, you want to make sure you set your printer options for your device, multi-purpose tray, your media check on off, the material type, and the weight. Okay, this is very important because the material type and the weight is what actually controls your fusing temperature. Okay, so if you have this set to say 1 or light, you're going to actually have a different fusing temperature, and it's not going to fuse properly to your garments. But for the 8432, these are already preset. And then we'll go to our ink removal. And in here, what I'm going to do is set these similar to what, Forever recommends for their materials. And we'll go with Euclidean round. And we will save this. Okay, and close. So now for this particular cue, I have this custom setting already configured for this print mode, and I can set my page size to whatever I want. I'll just stick with my A4 for now. Okay, and at this point, if I import my image, okay, it's going to automatically do my knockout, give me my color boost, and it's going to process with those whole settings that I selected. So if I go to rip this file and then view the raw data, I can view all colors as black. And if you notice, my image, basically the entire image is pretty much a transparency at this point. There's a couple of spots in here which will remain opaque, but for the most part, it's almost a transparent. However, the text that is white will remain opaque. And as I go to the darker areas, it will create the larger holes. Okay. So if you notice here, this is pretty much what Forever calls rasterization. This is what they call it. Okay. And our software can do it easily, no problem. And in fact, we have more capability than what the TransferRip product offers, as well as the other products on the market. Okay. Again, for this image as well, you can take a look at this one. So the areas that are white will be opaque. And the opaque areas are going to show up as a solid black when we view everything as black. Okay, so these areas here will have basically 100% white. And then as we go into the shadow areas, the holes get bigger as you flare out into the shirt. Okay. Let's see what other tools we have here to check. So I've showed you how to create a new cue. Very simple. Create the new print mode. And again, at this point, it's just a matter of customizing that cue the way you want. Okay. So if I go back to my cue setting here, my media setup and layout manager, layout jobs as they arrive, mirror job on import. We want it centered on the page. We have auto page layout, scaling if larger. So if the image is larger, it's going to scale down. You can scale always, meaning if it's a smaller image, it'll scale up to the page size. So you can actually customize this. And when you import it, the image is going to import that way. You can also set your scheduling options. You can have it by default as hold, meaning when you import the image, it's not going to do anything until you tell it. However, if you have the cue already configured exactly the way you want, you literally could have it set to rip and print to where you just import the job and it's automatic. It's resized, cleaned up, sent to the printer automatically. And then you have the last one, which is working on barcode, which I hope to do another webinar on barcode printing. Okay. And there you have it, folks. That's pretty much all of the features for transfer printing. Okay. The tools that we use for transfer printing, as well as the customization of the cue, as well as a print mode to optimize your workflow. Again, at this point, because I have it configured, it's as easy as import, right? Easy as import, resize if I need to, and then print. And that's it. No other modification or anything that needs to be done. And there you have it. Again, if there are any questions, please email me at rickr@cadlink.com. I'm more than happy to answer your questions. If you are a dealer or reseller and have questions, you can send those questions to your regional sales manager, or you can send them to me. I can respond, and I'll CC your RSM on the response as well. And I just want to go ahead and thank everybody for joining us today. In the situation we're in, it's difficult to do these things on a regular basis, but now that we're in the situation, this is a great time to bone up on our expertise, on our knowledge of the product, to one, help the user produce better product, and for the reseller, give you guys a better knowledge of our product. And with that, I want to thank you and have a great day.